Today's video comes courtesy of California, where through sectoral bargaining, the minimum wage for fast food workers has now been raised to $20. So whenever I saw this story making the rounds, the first thing that came to my mind is, well, what is sectoral bargaining anyways? And it's basically a type of collective bargaining where unions negotiate labor agreements that cover an entire industry or a big chunk of the economy rather than just a single company or work location. Thanks, Investopedia. I think of it as an industry standard for wages, benefits, etc. That way there's a level playing field and no one is at a competitive disadvantage while increasing benefits for their employees. So now that we got that much out the way, we're going to check out a clip that I came across from the PBD podcast featuring Fox News' Jessie Waters, where he's going to say some interesting things.
What are your thoughts about this wonderful governor's?
You're very good at math, so see if you can do this in your head. You probably can. If you're making $20 an hour to work at a fast food restaurant, right? Is that six figures? Are you making?
No, you're making 40 grand.
Come on, Jesse. Listen, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm a math wizard, but I feel like this kind of already signals to the general feeling everyone has, not everybody, but we'll say a certain group of people have towards raising the minimum wage. They feel like we really want to pay these people six figures to flip burgers, right? That's the thought here. And this dude's a millionaire, so he probably is so far removed from thinking about what $20 an hour is. But let's just go for a little bit further.
50 is just two exits and add a few zeros.
Okay, so
40K a year, full time.
40K a year.
Yeah.
So, and then if your husband or wife is also there, you're making $100,000 as a family.
Sure.
Both working at McDonald's.
80 grand.
That is okay. That's crazy. That is crazy, because that job really doesn't require much. So it's inflating the entire, labor sector
and the Happy Meal.
And the Happy Meal.
Unhappy, very unhappy.
Which I'm very unhappy about, but I believe Gavin Newsom will be president one day.
Okay, you get the general gist of what he's saying there, and he's not the only one who feels that way. There are actually a ton of people with this sentiment, and that's why I wanted to talk about this today. The problem, though, is that within today's context, that isn't necessarily the case, with the average age of the fast food workers being about 26 years old. And mind you, that's an average. So it means you have the younger people like you would expect, but you have a lot older people as well pulling up on that average. See, everyone shits on fast food work because though it's hard work, it's not necessarily seen as complicated work. And so a lot of people have this idea in their mind that it's really for younger folks who are really looking for a transitional job between them getting their degree, trade school diploma, or starting a business, something else. It's never seen as a job to a lot of people as something that you would stay at permanently in order to feed your family. Think of it, by the time some people are 26, they already have some major bills. They might have a kid or two, they have rent, a car note, or other major expenses. And since this is a California story, I pulled the average rent for a California apartment, and it's like $2,300. So even with this raise to $20 an hour, if you're a single person trying to live alone, good luck affording rent, a car note, insurance, gas, a social life, with a grand total of about $2,600 a month take home. So yeah, this is tragic. Now look, I'm not going to say I didn't share some of those views about fast food work being transitional work, but something had to give in today's context, especially given who's generally employed at those type of jobs today. So I feel like overall, this is a win for California workers, and I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think a major issue a lot of opponents of this policy had were the concerns over inflation. And look, I don't know too much about this, but it generally makes sense to me. The idea that increased labor costs could potentially lead to increased product costs due to pressures being put on profit margins. And whether they can keep those prices low and potentially absorb some of the higher operating costs while, still being competitive is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. I think the issue more broadly is we don't know to what extent prices will increase, especially when compared to wages. But I think it's fair to say it won't be one-to-one proportionally. And this is, of course, hard to tell exactly as, one, I'm just a guy on YouTube, who is no expert and is trying his best to read articles to understand the world better. And two, the general consensus on how this impacts inflation might not be known until some time passes and we're able to look back at the changes in the industry in California. One of the things I feel the opponents of this change really don't account for, though, is that the current minimum wage of California, just the general minimum wage, is $16. And that really doesn't take you that far in what we all know to be an extremely expensive state. And before we say something stupid like, oh, well, you know, why don't they just move out of California? The businesses aren't moving out of California.
I'm not fucking leaving.
And those companies need people to run their businesses, right? So it makes sense that the people who work there live within the vicinity of the places they work. It is wild to me that we live in a world with increased housing costs, increased food costs. Netflix raises their prices every other day. And the people who, during the pandemic, were considered essential workers can't afford to live in the places that they work. Because remember, the people who transition out of these jobs do not want to go back and work them. So we have to make it worthwhile for the people who are actually doing the jobs. If there is one thing we should have learned from the pandemic, is that every job contributes to the functioning of society. And I think it's fair to reevaluate what value a particular job is worth to all the people it serves. In this particular case, we're saying fast food jobs are worth $20 in the state of California, as negotiated by the employees, the unions, the companies, the sector. And though it doesn't necessarily solve the problems for the people living in those areas, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Anyways, that's my perspective. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe, as I got much more content like this on the way. And I apologize, guys. I'm a bit nasally today, but don't worry, I got more coming. So until next time, YouTube. Peace.